So Netflix just released a new live-action movie adaptation of the hit manga slash anime series ZOM 100 Bucket List of the Dead. I've talked about this series in so many videos in the past, but if you guys don't know what it is, it's about Akira, a miserable office worker who has fallen into a deep depression from working at a explosive workspace until a zombie apocalypse breaks out and he is finally free. He makes a bucket list of 100 things to do before becoming a zombie, and with the help of his friends goes off and completes each activity off the list. It's one of my favorite manga series of all time, and it was really weird to hear that they were gonna have both an anime and a live action series air at the same time, and I knew that it was not going to live up to the manga or the anime, so I had pretty low expectations. And when I found out it was going to be a 2-hour movie instead of an episodic series, then my expectations got even lower. Not only that, but Netflix doesn't have a good track record of their live action adaptations. Now, normally adapting a pretty popular anime series into live action sounds like a really good idea for not only fans of the series but just business purposes as well. But most live action adaptations usually always fail. Some fail to recapture the magic of the original source material, and others just completely ignore it to make something brand new. Now, don't get me wrong, not every live action adaptation is bad. We have some pretty good ones like I Wanna Eat Your Pancreas, Alita Battle Angel, Your Lie in April, just to name a few. But it's still pretty difficult to come across a really good one. It's very challenging to do live action adaptations of animation just due to the limited things that real life can show, especially when you have some pretty crazy and exaggerated environments, characters, and scenarios just all over your film. Live action is usually meant more for emotional, realistic storytelling. That's why most successful adaptations are usually slice of life or romance series. But it's also not impossible to recreate surreal moments in live action. I mean, just look at most Marvel movies, Avatar, or even like I mentioned before, Alita Battle Angel. Only problem is that they're mainly backed up by a massive production company with a huge budget to spend. For this movie, the budget isn't revealed to the public. Well, actually, it's because I just don't want to pay for IMDb Plus. But from the trailer and the fact that both production companies are pretty unknown, the budget seems to be pretty low. I'm guessing around 30 to 75 mil. The good thing is that ZOM 100 isn't super exaggerated or even super surreal either. Well, mostly, but we'll talk about that later. So adapting it can't be that hard. I mean, it's just a zombie movie, a genre of movies that just been milked. And because it's a new adaptation, I won't be doing a lot of comparisons to the anime or the manga because honestly, that's just not fair at all. That would be a video for another day. But the movie adaptation itself is okay. I want to start off with the positives first because there are definitely positives in this movie. First off, I really like the zombies in this movie. As a person who watches a lot of zombie films and TV shows, it can get pretty repetitive. So I like that the designs from afar look just like normal zombies, but up close they're actually pretty scary at times. There's moments in this film where you'll see a certain zombie up close and get genuinely uncomfortable looking at them. I also really like the main character Akira. I really like seeing how happy and energetic he is at first, but then get pretty miserable at his job pretty quickly. I think all adaptations have done this right because it's just a really easy concept. Plus, he's a very relatable character. I think everyone who has a job or at least had one can relate to Akira. I like the idea of the zombies not being a real focus of the zombie movies. Even though it could get pretty repetitive and annoying just relying on character drama, but I really like the side where it can be pretty tragic but also really fun. I love seeing Akira and the gang just checking off things from their list, things that seem pretty impossible to do in a zombie apocalypse, but they managed to do it anyways. Shaun of the Dead does this really well, and I can see this movie being at the same level of fun, not to be taken super seriously and just enjoy the moments kind of fun. But that being said, we gotta talk about the negatives, and the negatives are pretty major. The biggest problem with this whole movie is not the script or the concept itself, but just the way that it's structured together. I know I said I'm not gonna compare, but I basically have to with this point. ZOM 100 is a continuing manga and anime series. They could take their time and pace everything with every chapter or episode nicely. However, with this movie, they try to cover a ton of material, and that makes the pacing of the story feels all over the place. I feel like the story had around 2 to 3 endings, but every time I check to see the runtime, I'm only like halfway through the movie. The first 30 minutes is the best part of this movie though. We learn who Akira is, we understand his situation, we see it unfold, and then it ends off with the list. But as soon as they cover the first 2 to 3 chapters is when it starts to get pretty boring. And for this series being a comedy zombie movie, it's not really that funny. The movie only really made me chuckle twice, and it was around the ending. Maybe my humor just isn't for this movie, but I really felt bad not finding this funny, especially when they make a joke and I'm just thinking to myself, was that supposed to be funny? But anyways, to talk more about the negatives, I'm gonna have to go into spoiler territory. So if you haven't watched this movie, then I suggest skipping to this timestamp where I just give my conclusion. But I definitely recommend you guys watch this movie and make up your own opinions on it. Alright, so I already mentioned one of the biggest problems of this movie, but another one is the fact that they don't get the emotional scenes right. Mainly the scene where Akira was thinking of committing. It's supposed to be a turning point of just how bad Akira's situation is, but it doesn't present itself like that at all. The scene felt like it was more there to just tease the zombie apocalypse, which to be honest just came out of nowhere, even though we had the scene in the beginning. The same thing could be said with Kencho's and Akira's reunion. It didn't really feel earned. It also didn't feel like Kencho even wanted to reunite with him at all, which is another problem I have with this movie. I don't like Kencho. Kencho feels pretty out of place in this movie. He doesn't really have much to do until the final third act. He's uninteresting, unfunny, and we don't know much about him in general, other than his guilt about losing a game back in college, which again is only important when it comes back into the final third act. However, I do like the scene of them getting into a fight. It's literally the only scene with a good emotional impact, but it would have been so much better if they just got the reunion scene right. Shinsuka is fine as a character, by the way. I just wish we got to learn more about her in this movie other than she's a badass and wants to be a nurse. Visually, everything looks really good though, from the locations, the attires for characters, and like I mentioned before, the actual zombies. But the one thing that I can't ignore is just the god-awful CGI of the zombie shark. I was honestly excited to see how they would make the shark, since they haven't used any CGI except for the plane in the beginning. But man, as soon as I saw the shark jump out of the water, I completely gave up on this movie. Now honestly, it's not the worst CGI I've seen, and compared to stuff like sci-fi's shark movies like Sharknado, it looks pretty good. But I would have liked to see like an animatronic shark or something practical and then masked up with some CGI to make it look better. I don't know. I'd rather have that than just a fully CGI mess. But again, it's still better than whatever the fuck this is. But overall, this movie was honestly pretty much what I expected. ZOM 100 as a story, no matter what, will be very entertaining and very fun to see. This movie would have been pretty good if it wasn't for the pacing being all over the place. I know they wanted to cover as much as the manga as possible, but it's just too much. I like the main character Akira, but I really wish that they use Kencho and Shizuka more often in this movie. The visuals and effects were pretty great, except when it came to the final third act. But it was really hard to not compare this to the anime or the manga because I just really loved this series. I know how good this movie could have been. But compared to a majority of live action animes I've seen, I'd say that this is definitely one of the good ones. But for as a movie by itself, not comparing it to a anime or manga, I definitely have to give it a 5 out of 10. But what are your guys' thoughts on this movie? What are your guys' thoughts on ZOM 100 in general? Did you guys like this movie? Did you guys hate it? Let me know all of your guys' thoughts in the comments below, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video.